welcome to this exclusive Q&A session with Dr. George Roth and myself, Nick Pino, the EMF guy, the host of the annual EMF Hazards Summit. We'll just wait a few seconds to get started because there are still people joining and clicking OK. So we'll let a few seconds go by and officially start this session. I hope that everyone is ready for a nice 90-minute Q&A. And we have here Dr. George Roth. I'm just going to greet you in right now, and then we're going to do some housekeeping. How are you, George?
I'm well. Thank you for asking. Nick, how
And
are you? Good.
yes, well, you were a speaker during the summit. For people who missed it, it is still available as an optional purchase on emfhazards.com, and it is still discounted to $97. So it's completely optional. I know many people have watched maybe the entirety or part of the summit. I know that your talk was popular. I got a lot of nice feedback, but maybe just quickly introduce yourself in case that some people joining this Q&A aren't familiar with your work.
Sure. Well, my name is George Roth, and my background is in osteopathic and naturopathic medicine, some background in chiropractic. And I developed a technique based on the bioelectric signals of the body that has been in use for over 35 years. And we teach this to practitioners around the world. Um, and since probably about roughly 10 years ago, we noticed we were getting significant interference from electromagnetic pollution because our work depends on reading these subtle bioelectric cues from the body. And so because of that, I had to develop something which turned out to be tremendous benefit to other people to counteract or to at least compensate for the effects of electromagnetic radiation. And so now that is something that we've provided to the public, and people are finding its benefit to them in many ways as far as sleep, anxiety, often tinnitus. We've had people with seizure disorders responding, and so on. So it's been an exciting opportunity for us to be able to share some of this information. And we also have developed a form of biomagnetism, a specialized type of magnet that's helped with pain. And that's also a part of what we do professionally, but also now available to the public.
Amazing. And before
Later
we
on,
get
I'll also announce that I'm going to be planning seminars for the public so they can learn some of these
Oh,
techniques,
nice.
first aid, family care programs that can provide help to yourself. You can treat yourself and your family. And if we have a chance, I'll demonstrate a little bit of that today.
That would be lovely. I know that many people wrote questions in advance, but of course, if participants are live and want to ask questions, here's how to do it. We restricted the chat because with over 100 people from all around the world and probably well over 200 that are going to join in and out of the meeting, we wanted to make sure that we're able to read your questions. So please go just in the chat. You can select our team member, Melanie Pineda, and she is there to get your question. And after you send your question, please do not send it twice. We will do our best to answer as many questions as possible. And if you write it twice, it's going to make it a little bit harder for us to manage all these questions. And once you send your question to Melanie and not to me, not to Dr. Roth, because we will be busy answering questions, then we will receive it on a document. I will make sure to keep tab of time and try to get to as many questions as possible, alternating between questions specifically for Dr. Roth, but also questions about the summit, about EMFs. So I'll try to answer especially those that are that will benefit the greater amount of people on this call. So with that in mind, we will also send recording of this entire Q&A to everyone who is a holder of the EMF pack, so who purchased the summit. It will be sent tomorrow, along with links to Dr. Roth's magnet kit and the safe zone, and also other resources that we mentioned. So I will be taking notes. If you see me typing and moving my head around, it's because I want to make sure that I'm taking notes, and we include all those links along with the replay when it is available. So some someone started sending me questions, please send them to Melanie on our team to make sure we get them. We will not answer questions that are sent directly to me or Dr. Roth. We're going to get started talking specifically about the magnet kit. There's Stephanie who wrote in and said to Dr. Roth, I'm trying to address my extreme electrosensitivity. This is very common. She is age 70. She had matrix repatterning sessions this past winter for 4 hours, but her symptoms are still continuing. So it is an issue for her to continue seeing someone, and she's wondering, can I make progress at home using a magnet? She was especially interested in this idea that magnets are a form of bioelectricity or biocompatible that you can use. I know you have used magnets for pain management, but also for other conditions as part of your matrix repatterning system. Is there a specific way that you would recommend that people with electro hypersensitivity explore with the magnets? I don't know if you want to do a demo, that would be the right time, but I know it is a very common question. How do we use the magnets?
All right, let me just illustrate. First of all, the magnet that we're talking about is not a regular magnet. It's a unique device that I chanced upon probably about 15 years ago. It's a device that was actually developed in Germany back in the 80s, and we refined it and helped develop it. There seems to be some indication that it goes back even thousands of years that the Aztecs had some version of this. And so I'll just show you here on the screen why this magnet is very different. Okay, so I'll hold this up and you can see this magnet is basically what's called an alternating polarity concentric magnet. So each of these rings is an opposite pole, north, south, for example. And because of that, there's a very powerful cascading movement of electrons between these orbits that actually penetrates very deeply into the body and it stimulates the body's own microcurrent based on evidence that we have and other four double-blind studies that have been done, which are basically have shown improved like pain reduction. Okay. However, what we have found is that it actually seems to normalize tissue. We've had people reporting very often that they have reduced pain, but also reduced inflammation, more mobility when they use it. And this would be used on areas of the body that are, let's say, painful or inflamed. Now, someone who's 70 and many people who've had long-standing conditions because of the structural imbalance that we identify with matrix repatterning, it takes time for that to change because we may be able to normalize the structure and restore some, let's say, joint integrity, joint stability. However, there's been damage that's happened over time. What we see, and some good evidence for it, is that by applying these magnets at home, they seem to be able to progress in terms of reducing the inflammation and supporting their ongoing improvement. The other thing that happened by accident, and by the way, the home version, which is encapsulated in a small disc like that, it comes as part of the kit, the home treatment kit. That actually has a smaller version of the magnet, which is here. The large version is what we provide to practitioners, which are very powerful. They cannot be used for long periods of time on the body. They're too powerful. But these home version are very compatible for, let's say, using it for hours at a time. And they have been shown to help. So the thing that was kind of a surprise is we've had people who have reported some improvement wearing the magnets. And we have different forms. This is a wristband version, for example. We have a medallion or like a pendant that can be worn. We have other versions that are often people do apply them to the phone, for example. They seem to actually compensate for some of the effects of electromagnetic radiation. And we think that we don't have strong evidence for that. We just have anecdotal evidence so far. But for example, we had this first case we had with the other device that we provide called the Safe Zone, which really helped, our practitioners. As I mentioned during the seminar, one of our students, one of our practitioners lent it to a friend of hers whose son had been suffering from a brain injury since he was born, had developed very severe seizures, 10 to 20 seizures a day for 17 years. They got the safe zone, which is this device here, and within 24 hours, his seizures basically stopped. He he basically, in the last 3 or 4 years now, has hardly any seizures at all, which is remarkable. Um, but the thing that happened too, because he would sometimes visit his father, who didn't believe in his electromagnetic sensitivity, he had all kinds of devices. So he would come back from his father's house and be very debilitated for 2 or 3 days at least. And so what his mother did is she sewed a couple of these magnets into his clothing, and he wore that when he went to his father's house. And because we suggested maybe it might help. And when he came back, he would recover within an hour or two. And this is really something that was a big breakthrough, like concerns. Okay, we have some evidence for it. People have reported some improvement using them that way in the wearable devices, for example. But the safe zone we know does this in a larger environment. So in your home or office or whatever, safe zone we know emits a very significant Schumann frequency field, which mimics the Earth's magnetic field, which happens to be the same as our brainwaves. So to me, that was my reasoning. Like, how can we counteract this? Well, Mother Nature knows best, right? So I said, well, let's just copy her, you know? She
Yeah,
did.
it has a.
I send her royalties, by the way, every month. So
That's good. Well,
the checks haven't been cashed yet, so I don't know what's going on. But
that's
yeah.
amazing. But I think, studying nature and finding solutions in nature is inherently, it's not the only way to do things with new technologies, but I think it is a way um, to respect how long it took for evolution to bring us here, and respect the fact that our biology has co-evolved with natural things, including sunshine, including the Schumann frequencies, but including many different types of natural frequencies that are now a sort of whisper in a mist of screaming chaos that is this electropollution around us. So bringing back the safe zone in the environment is just a smart thing to do. I know that
Grounding is another example. Grounding is another example of using nature to ground the electrical pattern of your body, using the earth again as nature provided, for us to be on the earth uh, to stimulate that. Yeah.
yes, and just before we continue, someone told me that they have a hard time hearing Dr. Roth. If you have
Oh,
a hard time with the sound, maybe I don't know if you can make your mic a little bit closer. It's fine on my end, but I just wanted to make
okay.
sure that everyone hears.
Let me just check my audio settings here. It might be.
Okay, but it's good on my end. Maybe Carla on my team. Just let me know if you can hear Dr.
So
Roth
is
fine.
my audio? I'm a soft talker, so maybe I'll speak up. I'll have the
It's already
microphone a
better.
little bit
Okay,
closer.
a
Okay,
lot of
that might
people
help.
says
Yeah.
it sound fine. If you have issues with audio or video, a trick that I do on Zoom calls is simply to leave the call and click the link again to reset the call. A lot of people tell me it sounds good, so we're gonna keep moving. As far as self-treatment goes, where should people start? The way that I have been using the magnet. Hold on a second. I have the kit that you sent me, and you can
Yeah.
have a strip of these magnets, and around the band. So sometimes for me it's my right knee that was an issue when I was running. So of course I work on my running technique, and I try to do things that it's not just apply the magnets and kill the pain and kill the pain, but it helps with faster recovery. And I've been using it on all sorts of different shenanigans that can happen in your body when you sit too much, which is my work, sitting there at the computer. So I do try to exercise, but I feel like it is a good companion for my muscle aches. But what else can people explore with the magnets in particular? What have you seen work?
I think we have to look at the whole picture really, and that's why when you look at the bioelectric properties of the body, we know they're affected by injury. I've talked about this in our podcast, and so then our environmental exposures will have an effect, especially if they're interfering with the natural frequency. So these are all part of what I've recognized has to be accommodated in order for us to restore optimal health. There's many factors in health. There's mental health, there's physical, there's biochemical. emotional, spiritual, all of that comes into play. And from my point of view, if we can improve our bioelectric inherent conductivity in the body, which I've discovered are affected by injury, for example, and then look at our environment, we can help in many ways. But what I'd like to do is really because many people have heard my talk on matrix repatterning and the magnets. Maybe we can go to more questions and specifically address that. So first of all, the first question we had about the 70-year-old woman who had some matrix treatment. She had one treatment. So admittedly, there's many layers. I kind of question a 4-hour treatment. That's often more than we usually recommend because when there's chronic conditions, that may be a little too much for some people and maybe a series of treatment. I usually recommend a series. Typically, we see people getting better when they do that, then their body can integrate the changes. And as I mentioned during our summit, we're looking at changes in the framework of the body, literally how bone responds to injury, and then how we amazingly found a way to restore normal, healthy bone. And when the bone is distorted, literally, I discovered 50 years ago that the bone expands with injury. That's been confirmed by studies at the University of California. We can actually restore it. We have X-ray evidence we can restore that. It takes stress off of the joints. It takes stress off of the muscles. It literally creates a better environment for the organs and the brain.
Hmm.
So we know that this is why, we've been recognized with Matrix to be one of the main therapies that should be done early on after a concussion or traumatic brain injury. Dr. Norman Doidge, who wrote the book The Brain's Way of Healing, talks about that. And so one of the things we also know about electromagnetic radiation syndrome or electromagnetic sensitivity is that people who've had a history of concussion, and I've hardly ever met anyone who hasn't, by the way, on some level. So this actually can make you even more susceptible because now the neurons are more excitable. And when you add a high frequency microwave stimulation, you can actually cause chemical changes in the nerve cells that cause them to fire randomly. And you get what's called a noisy brain. You get, even things like migraines or even extreme cases of autism or epileptic seizures. But just anxiety, sleep disorders, all of those things come into play. So everything has to work together. We need to find solutions. That's been my mission in life for the last 50 years. And so, yeah, so let's see if, first of all, did we answer that question? If that person's
Um,
there, or we can
yes.
answer more
Well,
questions. Yeah.
specifically, she was asking about magnet placements that can help with
Yeah.
electro
That
hypersensitivity.
that really, yeah. So I would say the wrist, there's some evidence that wearing it on the inside of the wrist here on what's called the pericardium 6 point has helped a lot of people. We see quite often they immediately get relief from headaches, for example. Um, People who have reported that they do feel a little more tolerant of electromagnetic fields as
Okay.
well. The medallion is the pendant is another one, but we don't have good evidence compared to this, I would say, but it's still potentially going to help. So either way, it's beneficial for pain relief. Otherwise, but yeah, I think basically placing it on a painful area or for electromagnetic sensitivity, wearing it anywhere on the body, even in your pocket, may help.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll just answer a very easy question for me to answer, but I think a lot of people are maybe asking the same question. Linda has asked in advance, I have cellular, but I don't use Wi-Fi at home. Should I still turn on airplane mode at night? Absolutely. Airplane mode, what happens when you hit airplane mode and you ensure that the Wi-Fi icon and Bluetooth icons on your iPhone or Android or any other phone are completely turned off, so completely crossed off. What you do is that you turn off these wireless antennas. You've got multiple wireless antennas on your phone, each of which can interfere with sleep. Ironically, because a lot of people, use their phone as their alarm clocks or even track their sleep using their phone or, bring it to bed. And a lot of teenagers, of course, and a lot of children nowadays. So it's important to either turn off your phone or put it on airplane mode and ensure that all antennas are turned off. If you're not sure how to do it, or if you want to be able to take urgent calls in the middle of the night if there's an emergency, then set your phone in the next room, right? That's something that I tell people: charge it on the kitchen table or charge it in the corridor, where you will still hear it if there's an emergency, and that might happen, once every 10 years, hopefully. But at the same time, you avoid most of the effects if you create distance that way. So it is a good solution to just put it away, as far away from your pillow as possible, is where I would recommend placing it.
So if I could jump in on
Yes,
that,
yes,
only
please.
as a parent of older children who are not living at home,
Yeah,
there are situations, and you're a parent of a young child, I know.
yeah.
And when you understand from my perspective that you never stop being a parent, sometimes there are emergencies that come up. And so having the phone within earshot, I ask you this question. So what I have done is I turn off the Wi-Fi, I turn off the data, and I can take calls. Now, you have to realize when you take a call, it's a massive amount of electromagnetic stimulation, but it's for a short period of time. Okay, you can use maybe an RFID shield when on your phone, so at least when it's facing you, you're not getting direct exposure. So is that a solution from your point of view? Let's say you need to have it within earshot, and older people sometimes can't hear it if it's in another room. So I'm just wondering if that potentially could be helpful.
Well, in that case, you would still get a little bit of exposure every few seconds, because keeping it on the cellular network has a sort of ping. They call it, a ping, just verifying and telling the cell phone tower, I'm here in case you need me. So it's a
Okay,
way to stay connected.
got
That
it.
being said, if you wanted to keep it in the bedroom, but set it, at an arm's length, it would be way superior than, for example, behind me. That's actually my office bedroom. That's the office I've had for several years. It's a large room, but if I kept it right behind me on my nightstand, that would be a mistake. Instead, I could keep it on this office here, and it would be 6 to 8 feet from these two people sleeping here. So you're already creating massive distance, and that would be sufficient.
Yeah.
So that's what I would recommend doing during the night. Or for some people who maybe it's still available in their city or county or state, have a corded landline, or actually purchase the access to the good old corded landline. But I realize that now they're being dismantled all around the US as we speak. So it's unfortunate in case of emergency, because sometimes the cellular service is down, and now we don't have this corded landline, which, so just on a security standpoint, it was a superior way to respond to emergencies. But also, you don't get this alternative phone number where people can call in case of emergency. So it's becoming increasingly difficult to deal with these different EMF problems. I want to make sure to address a few more questions here. Are cell phones or pulse microwave? Can the inside of a microwave block cell phones? Well, you can set you're actually setting your phone inside a microwave would not block it completely. And you know why? Because the manufacturers are allowed to let their microwave ovens leak as much as the maximum permissible exposure in the USA or in Canada, where we both are, me and Dr. Roth. And these limits are extremely permissive, are in fact the two countries that have the most permissive EMF limits in the world is USA and Canada. Which is something that surprised me a lot when I started writing my book years ago. I did not expect Canada to be so permissive. I saw us as, we're super progressive on environment, protecting citizens. When it comes to wireless, we're failing badly. Yeah, we're in the top two worst countries for EMF emissions. So the microwave oven, in fact, is not very well sealed to prevent microwaves from going outside. So that's why a lot of people ask me about microwave ovens and do they represent a large source of exposure? The answer is, well, if you're staring at the popcorn while it cooks, you're probably doing it in a way that, exposes you to a lot of EMFs, equivalent sometimes to multiple phones. So it's not it's an exposure that you can easily avoid by not standing right next to it. I don't use a microwave oven. I don't like microwavable foods, and I have to add that microwaving anything plastic in the microwave oven is a bad idea, will give you more plastic exposure, and that's another environmental toxin we have to think about. So that's all I'll say about microwaves, but I know it's a very common questions that people send me. When it comes to the safe zone, Denise asked, did get a safe zone lately, and she said, I'm wondering how long it will take to notice the effect of the unit. She is an EMF hypersensitive individual. If the safe zone is taken to other homes while I'm there visiting and all their devices are still turned on while I visit for an hour, will I see a difference? So she wants to bring it with her. I don't know if you have testimonials that you want to share around hypersensitivity. I know there's a normalization effect that is seen in some individuals, but how quickly or how long can they expect to wait until they see their body acclimating to the safe zone?
Yeah, there's two sides to that. So what I would say is most people notice a difference fairly quickly within, a couple of days. Um, and I often tell people if you're going to purchase one, like I said to you, even Nick, I said, don't tell anyone else. It's in the house. Get a sense of the actual, objective response, which might be in different ways for different people. It might be changes in sleep, improvement in sleep, hyperactivity in children, calming down, seeing your pets who might be irritable or waking up a lot during night, pacing. We see dogs who are scratching a lot, especially with the 5G. They respond fairly quickly. Now, admittedly, the other issue, which is people have experienced, I think this was in your case as well, Nick, that you get some irritability because your brain has adapted in many cases. If you're very sensitive, it might be that you are now neuroplastically adapted to the higher frequency. And when you suddenly slow that down, that may be a disruption for the nervous system, which can feel uncomfortable. And that is where we suggest turning it down to low setting, maybe moving it further from yourself or anyone who is reacting. Give it 3 to 5 days, and then slowly increase the proximity or basically increase the power level to it to accommodate the space. And so we see that working quite well in most cases. And the other thing that we're recognizing is there may be some individuals who have other health issues, including parasitic infections or mold sensitivity,
Mm-hmm.
where it's possible that we're seeing a bit of a die-off reaction. There is some evidence that human frequencies can affect, let's say, organisms and abnormal cells in a way that causes them to actually die. And this is nature's way of cleaning the environment. But the problem is if you are not detoxing properly, drinking enough fluids, you may not be flushing those toxins out. So if you do notice anything like that, we encourage you to, take steps to slowly increase your exposure and do things to reduce the toxic load, like drinking plenty of water, eating foods that are going to help stimulate elimination, and so on. That might be helpful as well. But most people do notice a difference within a few days, yeah, as well. So, yeah, that's my experience, our experience with it. And the other thing is, of course, that we've seen brain waves improving. So we have done studies now using a form of electroencephalography to show that when people are in the environment of a safe zone, we see improvement and normalization of brainwave activity. So that's very promising. We're continuing to evaluate that, but that seems to be another piece of evidence that it is, in fact, helping. There are several testimonies. We really haven't gone out of our way to collect them, but there are several people who comment on the website experiences. One woman with sleep disorders, her dog was also being negatively affected, and that changed rapidly. Another person with chronic headaches and migraines who noticed instant relief, and now she's been headache free for the last 3 years. and then the mother of the young man who had the epileptic um, seizure activity as well, and as well as her ringing in her ears that improved. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's Matthew that wrote in about matrix repatterning. He says it has been a game changer after a life in extreme sports, including many concussions. I was addicted to endless chiropractic treatment. Since my first matrix repatterning treatment, I haven't seen a chiropractor for almost 10 years now. My 13-year-old daughter is wearing the magnets right now and reporting significant back pain relief. So that's awesome. My experience with matrix repatterning, which of course requires a practitioner. I know on matrix repatterning website you have many practitioners now that have been trained by you, and I don't know if you have other teachers as well, but
Yeah.
it's a technique that now is being rolled out to more and more practitioners, and I experienced it myself. And what I experienced is that after matrix repatterning and a few sessions we did, and also another practitioner in Quebec, my hips were not moving the same way. It was just normalizing the way that my hips function, and I could tell it as an amateur athlete that was doing these obstacle racing, Spartan races, and I could feel that all of a sudden I was moving straighter, and of course it was leading to less tension on one side, which is very apparent when you run for long distances. So for me it was also a great presence in my life, so I wanted to share that with you. There's also a lot of questions about tinnitus. Some people say that even without Wi-Fi, I still have the tinnitus. Some people have asked, can the safe zone help with tinnitus? Tinnitus can be caused by many things. I know that at times I was on a detoxification protocol and I started getting a little bit of tinnitus from time to time, just for a few seconds. And for me, it just shows that something is wrong in my body. But for some of them, it's debilitating because they keep hearing it nonstop. Have you seen the Safe Zone offer a normalization of this symptom in some people?
For sure, it's one factor. Like you say, there are many
Yeah.
factors. In the case of this mother of the epileptic child, for sure, she had tinnitus for 20 years, and she noticed an improvement almost immediately. But because of the work we do with people with concussions, neck injuries, head injuries, tinnitus is something that will often be one of the symptoms. It's a very focal area of where injury tends to concentrate, whether a head injury or an injury coming up through the neck. The hearing mechanism, which houses in this bone here, is very vulnerable to injury. So between tinnitus, dizziness can be another thing, hearing loss, we've seen many people improve with a combination of the matrix repatterning techniques, which normalize the structure and normalize the nerve supply. However, there may be biochemical factors, environmental exposure, including electromagnetic sensitivity, which heightens the symptoms. And there can be scar tissue. There's various factors. So it really has to be evaluated individually. It is just a symptom, okay? It's all it is of many. Yeah.
Yeah, that's important. I think that just a segue into one question that was sent. Hold on, who was it? It was Eileen. She said, how can one determine if they may be having sleep, anxiety, or other physical symptoms related to EMF exposure? It is difficult to pinpoint, right? Because imagine the number of factors that can impact sleep. If you eat too much before bed, you might toss and turn. If you have disrupted hormones and you're on a specific day of your cycle, I know for my wife is hormonal disruption leading to hot flashes before hitting a certain time in her cycle. There might be other factors like the temperature in your room, but also electromagnetic radiation. So it's not a question of necessarily pinpointing how much EMF is causing this or that, but it's reducing exposure for everyone. And then you might notice that things clear up in your health. For some people, I'll tell you right away. For some people, like this clerk at Avis, the Avis, rent a car here in Montreal. I told her about my work and I told her about my book, and she said, "Okay, we're gonna turn off, Wi-Fi at night and turn off our phones." And she didn't tell her husband, which is the best possible test. Her husband slept through the night for the first time in decades. He used to always wake up at 3, or maybe just to go pee or something like that, or toss and turn. And for the first time, he saw a difference. He was like, "My God, that's very, very bizarre." So for him, he was more affected than he thought, but only when you remove the offending agent will you find the benefits. For some people, they stop talking on the phone and they see that they don't have migraines anymore. So that's, a clear cause and effect. For some other people, it is more subtle than that. You stop putting your phone to your head, and maybe your health can improve in different ways because EMFs from your phone or Wi-Fi or Bluetooth and all these artificial waves are a chaotic type of EMFs. Whereas if we talk about the safe zone or natural exposures like getting outside in nature and sunshine, these are supportive frequencies for your body. So that's really the framework that I want you to think about. If we talk about EMFs, this is chaos, this is noise, and if we talk about different technologies that try to mimic nature or offer natural solutions or nature itself, these are supportive frequencies, normalizing frequencies. So it's like asking, what kind of benefits will I get if I go in the sun or if I use the safe zone? Well, it's hard to tell, but it's just an overall, your EMF diet is getting better when you use the safe zone, when you go in nature, and when you stop using as many of these technologies that bring chaos to your biology. So we shouldn't, be myopically focused on one impact or another, but that's the way I see it. Anything to add here,
Well,
Dr. Roth?
I was just gonna say that, as you suggested, there are many factors that lead to any one particular symptom. And the idea here is that electromagnetic radiation is an irritant. We know that. There's
Mm-hmm.
good evidence for that. And if you already have, let's say, a head injury, or let's say you have some kind of a digestive issue, microbial issue, it's affecting you, electromagnetic radiation could aggravate that. Just
Yeah.
as blue light from a screen could affect your sleep, for example, or, bad posture during work, or eating junk food. All of these things start to add up. There are certain things we have control over. The big challenges with electromagnetic radiation is many of us seem to have a limited ability to control that because if we're living in a city, for example, like I know you live in an apartment, we're surrounded by that. There's
Mm-hmm.
towers, there's other people using technology above you and below you, beside you. So those are things we can't control. So this is one of the reasons I would say that many people have found the safe zone at least is helping to compensate for some of it. It's a solution, helpful for many people. One of the things to just clarify, the safe zone does something a little different than most other devices in that it literally changes its level of frequencies day and night, just like the Earth does.
Mm.
And so we go into a lower frequency at night because of the way the sun hits the ionosphere. We know that the frequencies shift towards a lower frequency, which is compatible with sleep mode. Okay. And the problem with living in an environment with all this chaotic noise coming at you, you never can achieve that quiet space, right? To really get to that. And so if it's a factor, if you are having difficulty with sleep or anxiety, let's say at least trying to improve the environment, turning devices off at night, doing all those things, maybe using the safe zone. With safe zone, there is no risk really because we provide a 90-day trial, full refund for the device. If it doesn't help, you just return it for a refund, because not everyone is going to react the same way. Not everyone necessarily is having symptoms only because of electromagnetic radiation. It could be one factor. Okay, so just in terms of the assurance and the comfort of knowing that you don't have to worry if you want to try it, there really is no risk to try it. Okay.
100%. And a question about the safe zone and Schumann resonance from Laura. She asked, "Does the Schumann frequency in the safe zone?" And by the way, I kind of forgot to um, add more context. The safe zone is the device that you showed. It's a, it's a sort of box that is like that. It's not extremely portable where you would put it on in a backpack because you need to plug it in. You could,
Right.
I guess, plug it on an external battery,
Yeah,
but all
it uses a 2 amp adapter like you use for your phone, so you can plug it into your car. People have traveled with it
okay.
in car, RV, it works just fine. So it's something that is relatively movable,
Okay.
but you're not
And
going to carry it around. Yeah.
yeah, and I did post a link in the chat because someone asked me, what is the safe zone? I realized I kind of failed to provide context here. But so the safe zone creates the Schumann frequency that is different during the day and at night, which is a pattern similar to the Schumann resonance that we experience during the day and at night. But can it interfere with magnetic mattress pads? That's a question from Laura. Um, I I wouldn't know how the two technologies impact with each other, but I know the safe zone has a certain range that can cover the entire home if you have the plus version. So
Right.
would it interfere with,
Yeah.
it's hard to tell. What do you answer to that?
That has come up before, and so I'm assuming she's talking about something like the Magnetico mattress pad, which is
Similar
a
things like
device I've
that.
used
Yeah.
before. I've seen some benefit from those. It shouldn't be incompatible at all, because it's just providing what the earth provides. So whatever support you're getting from the mattress pad, well, you're not going to be in bed all day, and so as you're going through the house and you want to limit or reduce the amount of reactivity to electromagnetic radiation, the safe zone provides a little bit more of that. For context, I showed the inside of the box here. If possible, I can share my screen, just give you an idea of the level of technology. This is made in Canada, by the way. I can maybe share the screen here. I can just show you a quick view of what's inside the safe zone
That'd be
here.
great. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, it's a very high technology device developed by incredible engineers. I've worked with physicists from the University of Toronto. Magda Havas was involved in some of the research as well. Some of you may know her. So it includes Tesla coils, and some of the magnets are also included to broadcast this signal very clearly measured by, let's say, agencies that have measured the fields. We know they are properly controlled, and we know exactly what frequencies are being generated. And so this is really what's working for you in that regard. So it is verifiable technology, measurable fields that are being produced. And for many, many people, it's provided a significant amount of relief. And like I say, as far as compatibility with other devices, it really, it in a sense, you're doing is bringing the Earth's magnetic field into your home in a little bit of a higher level, but not ridiculous like extreme exposure.
Yeah.
It's in the roughly we measured it as to the average distance 6 to 10 feet away. You're getting about 140 to 200 picotesla. So that's 1/100,000th of a Tesla, which is very similar to what the Earth produces. Um, we are in a cycle now where the Earth's magnetic field is also in somewhat of a decline. Just within the last 100 years, it's gone down by 10%. So this is a cycle that happens every several 100,000 years. There's fluctuations in the magnetic field. We happen to be at a bit of a low point. Unfortunately, it's the same time that we're also experiencing a lot of additional non-biocompatible interference. So this is why we think the safe zone is potentially a solution for many sufferers of electromagnetic radiation syndrome, which is the new term that's now being used for electromagnetic sensitivity or electrosensitivity. But yeah, like I say, we tried to create a device that mimics the Earth as closely as possible with the day-night variations. You can set the timers to exactly when you want to wake up, when you want to go to sleep. One of the solutions we thought of as well, because some of you may have small children who have a different sleep pattern than, let's say, the adults.
Mm.
So there are different versions of the safe zone. One's a standard one, which produces a slightly smaller field. and then one is the plus version. So the standard version, for some people, if they have a larger home and they have the children in one part of the house, you can actually set a separate program for them using one device, and the other device can be more in the general area or for the parents. And so you can set their timer to maybe get them to want to go to sleep around 8:30 or 9 p.m., whereas the other unit might be running not till 10 or 11, in which case we've seen many people when they set that timer, they literally want to go to sleep. Like it's very noticeable. And we've had one thing we've now added to our instructions is to make sure the time is set to the local seasonal time change. So we've had some people just in the past spring complaining that they can't wake up because they didn't change the time to adapt to this Eastern Daylight Time. And once they corrected it, it's very remarkable because we've had cases like that. I know with the several users who suddenly found their symptoms came back. And then when they got to check, they found out by accident it had become unplugged.
Oh,
But they were
okay. Yeah.
cleaning or there's some things, furniture was moved around, it became unplugged. And then when they went to look, oh yeah, that's why. So it's proven itself many times like that, where just inadvertently people have done almost like a double blind study because they didn't know it was unplugged, right?
Well, it's powerful, and I don't want to this to be just about the safe zone, but I'll mention that there's a coupon code because it's there, and I know some people told me I want to try the safe zone. I already know it's just a coupon code EMF guy, so I'll quickly mention it, and we'll move to something very important. Dr. Brenda said, "I'm astounded by the number of folks that have a need for joint replacement, self included. I've been wondering if the electromagnetic pollution is contributing." Comments. I'll just start with a quick note saying that the first time I heard about this link of bone density and cell phone radiation, so a reduction of bone density caused by the placement of a cell phone on the hip joint, it was from a man called Dave Asprey that many people know as, a biohacker and someone very, very well known online. He got a DEXA scan that I think is fairly precise to look at bone density and fat mass and whatnot, an entire body scan, and he found that the hip where he kept his phone was if I recall correctly, 20 to 30% loss of density. And he was very alarmed by that fact. And after that, he started using, a phone case that blocks EMFs and solutions like that. So he saw a difference between the two hip joints, exactly where the phone was. I was not surprised by these findings, but I must say that I'm not aware of a lot of scientific data in the world of bone research that would look specifically at, for example, case studies of men keeping a phone and then taking a bone scan of that hip, for example. What do you think, as an expert in matrix repatterning, and you've seen bone healing, have you seen specific cases where people seem to have lost bone density because of devices or EMFs?
Yeah, that's a very difficult one to track because it can happen over time, but we have
Yeah,
very good evidence that injury causes bone deterioration. If I could share one slide, we had
please.
an opportunity to have some cases that have been quite significant in that regard. And this is an example here. Let me just quickly show you here. So this is a case of a young girl who had a severe injury fracture that was not healing for a period of 5 years before she was treated by one of my students. And so this is how her bone looked for 5 years. Okay, non-union. They had to put a metal rod in here. You can see here. And this is her condition. She had to walk with a walker and with canes and crutches. She literally, at the age of 15, she was looking at a life of misery and pain. And this is after 6 treatments where we saw improved bone integrity. So it definitely, I would say, anything electromagnetic could interfere with that healing as well.
Mm-hmm.
This was also using the magnets along with the treatment, but it really quickly responded. And the thing is, this is another view here of the same person here. This is looking at it from a side view. And you can see how badly they gave her a horrible diagnosis called fibrous dysostosis or fibrous dysplasia. They said she would never be able to walk normally again. And this is what the bone looked like. And now the rod is removed. She's walking normally. It's about 3 or 4 years now that she has not had to have any other intervention. And so my point is bone is very responsive to piezoelectricity, bioelectricity. The entire body is. But bone is also very vulnerable to impact injury and strain. And when it fractures or when it's even injured, it can lose its integrity. And so we see, for example, with bone density testing, we've had, an issue here with cases where in years when I've been in practice for over 45 years, when I first started practice, in order to assess bone density, we would look at a DEXA scan of the heel, of the wrist, of the hip, of the low back, and then we do an average,
Hmm.
right? And they say, okay, well, based on, there may be one or two areas that don't show deterioration, so we're not going to give you all these drugs to treat your osteoporosis. However, about, it has to be 30, at least 30 or 40 years ago now, very quickly after I started practice, they said, okay, you know what? We're not going to look at all of these areas. We're just going to look at the hip and the low back. Well, guess what? Those are much more commonly injured in a more severe way because the amount of force applied to them. And we see those areas deteriorating rapidly. So the phone may be adding to it. But the point is that I often see those scans and you see a big discrepancy between the hip and the low back. Doesn't matter. You could have a 25-year-old low back and an 80-year-old hip. They're still going to give you the medication, and because they don't care anymore. So prescriptions almost doubled overnight for these bone density drugs, which we know are not the answer. We know have a lot of serious side effects. So really looking at bone health, I would say electromagnetic support, looking at your environment, but also recognizing that bone injury, which is what we do on a regular basis with matrix repatterning, is something no one else is really dealing with. So if you're interested, go to our website, matrixrepatterning.com. There's quite a bit of information there about how we are actually able to change the shape of bone. It's been verified by many radiological studies. We have practitioners who are medical doctors, physical therapists, physiotherapists, chiropractors, naturopathic doctors, etc., who are using these techniques very successfully around the world, and they're getting the same results, right? Like that example of that young girl was one of my students, who's now one of our lead instructors, but he's been doing this for over 10 years and consistently seeing that kind of an improvement. But thankfully, we had the X-ray evidence there, which was remarkable because you don't often get a chance to see how quickly a bone can change with a short course of treatment. So it was quite gratifying to see the actual noticeable, measurable evidence of that.
And and I have to mention maybe a link that not everyone will necessarily have right away in their mind when it comes to the link between concussion and electro hypersensitivity or the EMR syndrome. There are a lot of indications that some people have whiplash or car accident with concussion or without concussion, but people with concussions, some of them become right there electrosensitive. And why do you think that is, Dr. Roth, that, just a head injury and sometimes, even a concussion? I heard about people playing soccer, receiving, just hitting someone's head. It's not that severe, you're not bleeding, and yet there is an injury that, if not addressed, causes electrical disruption in the entire body. Why in your, scientific mind is it happening?
Yeah, well, I would say there's good evidence now that we have when you have a head injury, you are distorting the head, but it also transmits a lot of force into the actual nerve tissue and even the blood supply to the brain. And as Dr. Deutsch, who's a major researcher in concussions, his comment was that, one of the things that he recognized as a serious issue with head injuries is that he recognized that this type of distortion of the head is something that, if it's not addressed, it continues to exert stress on the nervous system, which can then add to all of the changes that we see. For example, it's already a noisy brain. So, for example, let me just show you a quick slide here and give you an example of how that looks. This is a very common injury pattern that we see very frequently. And so this is an example here. And so this is an illustration of the kinds of injuries we see very, very commonly. And so with the head injury, you can have a direct injury to the head, but where it reacts, because the head is basically a fluid chamber, it creates expansion, distortion, and stress on the nerve supply. Now we know when a nerve axon, like a nerve fiber, is distorted, it becomes very permeable to electrical ions. And so now these ions, which should be controlled in terms of how they move across the cell membrane, are now able to migrate very easily, which causes random firing of the brain. So guess what else affects movement of electrical ions? It's electromagnetic radiation
Yes.
from non-biocompatible sources, which irritates this as well. So it's a cumulative effect of combinations of the head injury, which makes them more susceptible now, and then added to that, the electromagnetic radiation, which alters not only the movement of ions, but we know affects the mitochondria as well. These mitochondria are little energy centers in all the tissues, especially for the nervous system. These are disrupted, they alter their function. You don't get the regeneration of cell tissue here. And so this is something that is recognized, and why Dr. Deutsch recognized as an important intervention. So this is an example of the kind of injury you can see in someone before treatment. We see this head. So if you look at the flattening here on the left side, on the forehead, you can see here it's a flat area. And this is just a quick picture before and after treatment. And you can see this flattening. And after treatment, you can see it's much more symmetrical. These are things that people can feel right away. They're quite shocked. That bone is actually very flexible and very dynamic. People think of bone as a rigid, like a cooked chicken bone or a beef bone. That's not at all what living bone is like. Living bone has plasticity. It's very moldable. One of the remarkable things happened, I'll tell you, a number of years ago. I had a young man, he was probably in his late teens, and this is a demonstration of, well, we treat a lot of babies, by the way, and this will lead into the story. This is often babies are born with what's called a dysostosis of the head, where because of their positioning, either in the womb, in the pelvic floor, or during delivery. And so we treat a lot of newborns. We see more and more disruption of the shape of the head because of these issues that develop even in the womb. And one of my patients I was treating him, and so we had the opportunity. He was in the room being treated. His mother, who's a specialist at a major hospital in Toronto, was sitting in to observe. And as I was treating his head, the grandmother happened to be there. So all three of them came because they wanted to support this young man, and they're originally from India, India descent, but actually from in South Africa, which is the Indian community. And the grandmother, as I was treating him, said, "Oh, we do this right from the moment they're born. As soon as in their culture, as soon as the baby's born, the midwife will go ahead and mold the skull into a spherical shape." And I said,
Really?
wow, wow. They knew this because they recognized that there's an improvement, there's a better
Hmm.
chance that this baby will thrive if that is addressed very early on. So that
Wow.
goes back probably hundreds, if not thousands of years. Who knows? All I'm saying is it's becoming more of an issue, by the way. There are issues to do with the change in the magnetic field of the earth where babies are now presenting incorrectly. They're putting more pressure on the head. According to one of my patients who worked in obstetrics, according to the specialists now, they recognize that 1/3 of all newborns are born with distortion of the head, the neck, and the spine. 1/3 now, which is a
Wow.
huge amount. And so we've had to we work a lot with these kids, and we see significant changes. And this is Dr. Norman Doidge, who wrote about this in his book, his original book, The Brain That Changed Itself, which is a remarkable book if you haven't checked it. He's been investigating traumatic brain injury for decades now. And in his latest book, he talks about matrix repatterning because he observed the cases, he saw how we treat acute patients and how remarkably quickly they recover. And so his comment was that it should be the first thing done if a head injury, and he was hoping that one day it would be in hospital emergency departments because he saw how quickly people can respond to this. But along with treating the structure, it's very important to recognize that these are things that we can support through electromagnetic environment. Nutrition affects it. We know the microbiome is significant in terms of neurological health as well. So all of these things add up, and begin to affect our health. And so it's always going to be a combination of different things necessary to ensure that people can overcome these limiting conditions, but also, things we can do for ourselves. Absolutely.
This is powerful, and to this day, you tell me about bone changing form, and somehow you
Amazing.
tell me that, and my mind goes to a place like, oh, this is magic, because the way I've learned about bone from my youth in school is bone is, it's hard. If you take a bone, you would take a bone that's dead, of course, outside of a body, and you would
Yeah.
hit it and like, oh no, this doesn't move at all. But the way that the bone acts in living tissue is kind of it is mind blowing, and I know there's a change in paradigm in scientific research now around that flexibility of bone, and it's kind of a novel idea. But is this an idea just for? That's a question for myself now. Is this an idea that is now widely accepted in bone research, or is it still
Well, I
controversial?
would say it's starting to become accepted. We're
Okay.
seeing some of our students are medical doctors working in, hospital facilities are trying to introduce it. But the point is that this is something that many orthopedic specialists recognize. I'm working with one right now. When we look at, for example, talk about hip replacement, joint replacements, why they're so common. Well, for sure, these bone changes, we can see them very clearly. Once it's injured, the joint is no longer the right size. You start to get a lot of friction.
Yep.
We know we have been able to reverse that, which is what I'm doing with our research to show we can see X-ray evidence of that, to take the stress off the bone because the cartilage, which people say, oh, it breaks down, actually will regenerate. Studies have been done, for example, on rats where they remove the cartilage and within a few weeks to a month or two, it grows back. It's a constantly replaced solid lubricant. But if the
Okay.
bone is the wrong size and it's putting pressure on the cartilage, it breaks down faster than it's being replaced. In a living state, cartilage is not what we see in a cooked bone. It is the same consistency as a hard-boiled egg white. You can scrape it off with your
Really?
nail. Absolutely. Okay. I wrote when my first book was written in 1995 on some of this material, and the foreword was written by an orthopedic surgeon, a knee specialist who would do this, surgeries. And when he learned about this technique, he stopped doing surgery, basically.
Wow.
And we've been teaching together now for the past 30 years or so. So, this is something that people just don't realize. I think specialists know about the flexibility of bone. They're able to mold bone even when they're doing hip replacements and joint placements. But we know when it's injured, it becomes more rigid. Then it
Okay.
becomes vulnerable to fracture because it changes its actual structure. So this is something that, there was evidence for that going back to studies that were done recently in 2005. I mean, the stuff I've been talking about with bone came to light. Um, I've been talking about it for years. And then in 2005, there was a study done on looking at what happens to bone during injury, which highlighted, exactly what I'd been saying for decades. And so I'll just show you this quick slide here. This is a study done at the University of California. And this is something that they were able to validate. So bone itself is not what we think. Um, so it's basically a protein which is collagen, okay? And collagen, by the way, is an interesting substance. It's a main protein that supports the entire body. And so the collagen, which forms the framework like a rebar inside the bone, and then the crystals are laid down on top of it. Collagen is a known semiconductor. Okay. And so that's really important when it comes to looking at bioelectric health, because this is how we actually pick up these injuries. Because when the bone is injured, it changes shape, all right? And the collagen goes from a conductor to a resistor. And they know this. There's a recent study just came out in 2023. They actually were able to measure these bone changes, and they recognize that it loses its conductive properties
Wow.
and it loses its elasticity. All right. So it's really mineralized fascia. Okay. And when you look at this is the study, this is from the study that was done at the University of California, when they put impacted bone, okay, they used a very powerful microscope to look at the proteins inside the bone. It expanded during the impact to a very significant degree. All right. And then after the injury, it stayed bigger. Exactly what I've been saying since, late 1980s. All right. So that's exactly what they found. And when that happens, it loses its elasticity, its flexibility, and its electrical conductive properties. And that's how we pick up these injuries. We literally can detect the gaps in electrical conduction using these magnet devices that we developed. And this is something that people can actually learn. We're hoping to introduce this to other people in the general public so they can do some first aid, because these are things you can, right away, if you took care of some of these injuries, you could limit the amount of damage that continues. Because once it's expanded, then the joints break down, the bone becomes more vulnerable to fracture and osteoporosis. You also affect the organs. We've seen improvements in cardiac function, liver function, kidney function. We've had many, many cases, and then concussion, of course, because these are fluid-filled compartments. But when the bone is distorted, when the fluid expands with an injury, and literally our organs are made of the same material. Let me just show you. Inside the cell is a protein framework that looks something like this. And we know from other studies, one of the cell biologists who we've worked with in the past, Dr. Donald Ingber, they were able to measure what happens with mechanical stress. And when it expands with an injury, it actually absorbs energy and expands. Electrons can no longer go through that. That's what happens to collagen. All right. And what we do with our technique, we literally just apply the normalizing field of the magnet and a little bit of gentle pressure, and it comes right back to its original shape. It now regains flexibility and it conducts electricity. However, in the internal organs, it's a little different. Internal organs, including the brain, which is basically the fluid chamber, that protein framework causes an expansion because the fluid inside, like a water balloon, expands, right? And that becomes very rigid. Now we hear about enlarged hearts, enlarged livers, enlarged spleens. Guess what? The organs don't work the same way. We know that because as a naturopath, I look at blood work for liver enzymes, cardiac markers, things like white blood cell counts or platelet levels. Those are all disrupted when the organs are injured. And we know we can improve it because when we treat it, it comes back. We can measure the outcomes because within a month or two, we see improvement in cholesterol levels, liver enzymes, platelet levels, and so on. One of the first cases actually was probably about 25 years ago. I was treating a dog. We treat animals as well, very successfully with horses and dogs. And this dog I was treating because of a hip issue. And we were treating it, and I found an injury in its rib cage, which was affecting the muscles going to the hip. So I corrected that area around his rib cage on the right side. So I got a call from the patient about a month later, said, "Oh, what's wrong?" And the patient said, "Well, they got a call from the veterinarian." And they were a little, "Oh, what's going on?" I was a little concerned, right? Did I kill the dog? No. So anyhow, what happened was the veterinarian called because they said they've been tracking this dog for 5 years and it had elevated liver enzymes, which is a sign of liver inflammation and damage. And they said, all of a sudden, it's normal. I said, "Oh, that got my attention." I said, "Okay, we can actually measure this stuff." So we routinely look at things like liver enzymes and cholesterol levels and other chemicals, components of cardiac, heart muscle, and so on that improve with treatment. So we know that improves. like we've done EEG studies as well with before and after treatment of the head. So those are things that are essentially something that's measurable. And unfortunately, no one's been measuring it, right? Because they didn't think it was possible to change it, right? But we are seeing those changes, thankfully. So that's basically, what we've been able to measure. And hopefully we'll get more and more studies done, to verify those things. But it's challenging because I'm outside the medical world, to getting in. But we have some students now who are medical practitioners who are trying to introduce it into the medical field. And so hopefully we'll get more research done on that level.
Yeah, and it's extremely, extremely expensive when you fund research
Yeah.
yourself, to say the
Yeah.
least. I
Plus,
mean,
plus the
yeah.
drug companies for some reason don't want to come up with a non-drug or non-surgical
Yeah,
solution.
exactly.
I'm not sure why. Maybe I'm being paranoid.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
Geez. Okay,
Yeah.
there's a few questions I wanted to
Sure.
address. One of
Please.
them
Please
that
go ahead.
several people have asked is about mattresses. Linda asked, we are curious about whether there is EMF produced from springs in bed mattresses. We are very, very EMF sensitive. We need the new mattress, and we're wondering if the springs and mattresses are a source of EMFs. Well, how it works is that when you are in a room, even without Wi-Fi and without wireless, there are electrical fields everywhere because the electricity, the way that most homes are wired, if not, the vast majority of them, is that we have Romex cables in the walls. This means a plastic cable where the electricity does not stay in the cable. I always used to believe that electricity always stay in the cable. That's not how it works. It's allowed to leak to a certain extent. And sorry, my camera is glitching a little bit. But what happens is that there's an electric field that can be measured 6 to 8 feet from these cables. So if you're standing in the middle of a room, you are exposed from the electricity, in the ceiling and the floor everywhere. So this problem is called, just having elevated body voltage if it's measured on your body, which is, some people could have a few volts of current that are running through their body at any given time in the bed. This problem be made worse if you have a lot of metal pieces on your mattress or on your bed frame. So, on a building biology standpoint or EMF mitigation specialist standpoint, what they recommend is if you can have a bed that is as low as possible in any type of metal, including coils, this is their recommendation. Of course, it gets a little bit tricky with mattresses because I hear from other people, well, the foam mattresses can be very unclean on other toxins. So if you go with a foam mattress, you have to make sure that, it's as organic or certified with low VOC, these volatile organic compounds that can off gas in your room because, of course, you're spending a third of your life on your mattress. So it's a bit tricky, but there are good companies that do healthier versions of foams or natural materials without much metal in the mattress or with no metal at all. So ideally, in nature, you wouldn't sleep on a metal frame with electricity around you. You would sleep with no electricity around you. The only electricity or EMFs you would get is the Schumann resonance, and we talked about that in length, but you would get natural frequencies all day and all night, and you wouldn't be exposed to all this man-made stuff, and you wouldn't be sitting on a piece of metal. So it would be a much different situation. So the recommendation is simply to find a mattress that has little metal as possible in it. There is also a question that I think is a good follow-up to your intervention you did about matrix repatterning and bones and concussion. Someone asked about, I think it was his daughter. My daughter, Beth, said, a question for Dr. Roth. My daughter had a severe concussion about 10 years ago when she hit the left temple. She has seen many practitioners, but none have alleviated the constant headache that she has. Is it too late to assist the body to heal, or could matrix repatterning be beneficial? In other words, can it work on old injuries, or is that something you have to apply right away when the injury has happened?
No, no, we've seen patients 30, 40 years or more after head injuries, and they have responded very well. Every case is different, but 10 years is not unusual for the kinds of cases we've seen many, many times and have had significant success, it really should be evaluated by a certified practitioner. Those practitioners are listed on the website matrixrepatterning.com, and just click on the Find a Practitioner link, and that will give you a list of the practitioners closest to you to get evaluated and hopefully find a solution. So I would say that length of time doesn't necessarily limit the potential for improvement.
Tremendous. And I have another question here. I was about to answer personally, but I'll just answer to everyone. They talked about, grounding or earthing, which is something that another speaker in the summit, Dr. Gaetan Chevalier, addressed. He's the director of the Earthing Institute. So will the safe zone give me the same benefits as being grounded on Earth all the time inside the home? These are different types of natural exposures to the Earth's natural magnetism or electrical grid. When you are earthed or grounded, let's say you walk barefoot on the grass, that's the best example, or maybe even swimming in the sea is even a better way to get grounded. You are getting electrons from the earth in the form of it's a DC signal that you're getting that goes up to your body, and it has a normalizing effect. So it is you literally being connected to the earth and having a point of reference for electricity. And the way I learned about it from Dr. Chevalier and other researchers is that this will give a point of reference for all the bioelectrical parts of your body, which is all of them, all cells and mitochondria and organs and your brain, and all these systems are looking at a point of reference and say, oh, okay, this is zero. And there's also probably other things that happen. So there might be even a circadian rhythm entrainment from being grounded. And there's anecdotal evidence, but that's also something I heard from a few researchers. So in other words, if you hurt yourself in Paris, it wouldn't be the same as if you hurt yourself, the other side of the ocean in Seattle. Your body would recognize what time it is based on the sunshine and the light, but also on your connectivity. The Schumann resonance is different. Though, Dr. Roth, how would you explain the difference between these two phenomena that are both natural?
Yeah. From my point of view, I would say that any intervention we can use to align ourselves more with the natural rhythm, natural frequency available, whether it's directly from the earth, which is not always practical in many urban settings. I definitely recommend getting out there, getting natural sunlight, getting exposure to the ground whenever possible. The safe zone really just provides another level of potential support for some kind of bioelectric environment that's more biocompatible. I'll just demonstrate, if I could, a way for you to test that yourself, okay?
Yeah,
So you can test how different devices may, or different measures might be affecting you. So I'm going to switch to another camera, okay, and see if I can
amazing.
show you something here that you can all learn and even determine if you have a safe zone, for example, or grounding, shoes, or other things. You can test yourself to see if they're actually doing something. Okay.
Amazing.
All
I
right. So
love it. I'm going to remove my spotlight, put you full screen here.
I'm gonna switch over to another camera here. Okay. Let's come over here. All right. So let's see. I'm going to see if I can see myself here. Okay, so a couple of things here. So what I'm going to do is show you a technique where you can measure the response in a muscle, for example, because when we have a normalizing, I'm going to move my microphone too. That
Oh,
might
thank
help.
you. That's very helpful. Yes, much better
Okay.
sound.
Yeah. All right. So is that better? You hear me okay?
Very
All right.
good. Very good.
Great. All right. So when you're aware of a normalizing environment, your muscles respond to that very quickly. I mentioned how collagen reacts to a normal bioelectric field. It's a piezoelectric substance, so it does respond, and collagen is everywhere. So, for example, I'm going to get you to try this little exercise, and this is basically something you can do at home if you just put your legs at 90 degrees and check the muscle tone in your thigh. All right. And all you need to do is just gently push down towards the thigh bone. Just see how far that muscle allows you to go in towards the thigh. Okay. That's a measure of what we call the barrier, testing the barrier, okay? So what I'm going to do, for example, here, I have the safe zone running here. So what I'm going to do is turn that off. I can't leave it off too long because you have other practitioners in the clinic who depend on it, so to do their work. So if I turn it off, okay, and I go back, give it a few seconds, and I go back and retest, I can feel it just doesn't let me in at all. All right. Now, I recommend when you're doing this, do it with your eyes closed. All right. So if you have a safe zone, you can test this out. If you want to turn off your Wi-Fi, test it out. You can see all of these different reactions because when you limit or reduce or let's say improve the environment, you should notice more flexibility. So I turn the safe zone back on, give it a few seconds. All right. Usually takes a few seconds and then I can go in like it just feels like butter. I can go right in. And that's something you can try. Just play with it, eyes closed. The magnet does something very similar. If we put that on the body, we'll also see that response. You can check that yourself if you have one. We're going to try it at home. But the same thing, turn off the Wi-Fi, turn on the Wi-Fi, notice the difference in tension or tone in the muscle. It's a very rapid test. Put on, like I have grounding strips on my shoes. I don't know if you can see them, but that's another thing. It's much better, of course, if I'm on a grounded mat. But that's something you can try outside to see how it feels with the shoes without. So another technique I wanted to show you was something you can do for yourself to release some of the tension in your body. Now, one of the things, there is a video, I'll see if I can find the link that shows this technique online, but very common area of injury is right here in the lower leg because we either sprain our ankle, which affects the bone structure, or we might bang into some furniture. The worst injury, of course, is walking into a trailer hitch, which is a very Canadian phenomenon. But I'm sure a lot of other people have done that. So anyways, that damages the bone. And if you check your bone area, just on the exposed part of the bone, you may notice it's very tender. All right. So because of this electrical conduction through the body, it's actually one of the first areas we treat with matrix repatterning. And so the reason for that, I'm going to just change the angle of the camera so you can see what I'm doing. Hang on. It's better. Let's see. So you can see how my foot is on the ground, more or less, flat under my knee. So check the tenderness. And in order to stimulate that electrical conduction, because this really, when the tibia or the bones in the leg are injured, they block the ability to ground current through the entire body. So it's one of the first things we treat. So what I'm going to recommend is check the tenderness, see if it's tender on either side. Then you can go ahead and apply this form of piezoelectric stimulation, which is very gentle pressure. The pressure, basically, you can simulate by putting your hands together, close your eyes, and just feel how when you balance the pressure sufficiently, you'll actually get a feeling of kind of energy or kind of a fullness coming in through your arms into your chest. It's a really, really nice feeling. If you do too much pressure, it's not going to feel good or not enough. But this is what's called barrier pressure, which is a piezoelectric stimulant. And it's very similar to techniques like Qigong or Tai Chi. There are a lot of similar things that have been handed down through generations, right? So we're going to apply that to the leg now. Now, if you have the home treatment magnet, you can actually put that magnet right over the area. It'll improve your response, but without it even, you can improve it, okay? And there's straps with the kit that comes with a number of straps in here that you can put it on different areas like the knee, the hip, the shoulder, the arm, the wrist, and so on. And then this is a common area. So we would place the magnet here perhaps, but even without it, just gentle pressure, lean over the area that's more injured and put just gentle pressure towards the ground. Your foot's right under there, and you should feel a sense, you could feel a sense of fullness, or some people feel a tingling feeling or a bubbly feeling in the leg. Stay with it until you feel it relaxing. And it might take 2 or 3 minutes of gentle pressure, but if you use too much, it's not going to work. And close your eyes and get that nice sense of fullness or flow. And that literally, if you do that once in a while, check your legs. If they're injured, that could block your electrical flow. And many people, once they clear that, they feel their entire body feels better. They can breathe better. they're grounding better, basically. Okay, so that's a technique you can try for yourself. All right.
Thank you so much. This is very, very helpful. And it just makes me think that, my for me it's always my right leg that is, and we can hopefully when we're gonna meet in Montreal in next week, so hopefully you can check it out. But it's always, the right leg, and now it's my right hip. But I know that this bone in particular and this shin bone is always been a problem, and it
Try
keeps
that.
coming back.
Try that because it'll save me time when I see you next
Yeah,
week.
okay. I'll,
Okay.
I'll I'll start applying it every day.
All right.
Yeah, it just
Good.
if it could just relax, and just feeling my quad on the left side. I know my quad on the right side is a ton of brick, but I didn't think I was able to feel the difference, but I can feel the difference, and it's so profound. It just
Yeah.
feels like my right quad is a rock right
Yeah.
now. So there's a vast
And if
difference
you put the
because of the
magnet
hip
on
injury.
there, if you put the magnet in there, you'll see the difference right away. It will help. Okay.
Amazing. Thank
All
you.
right.
And I want to be respectful of everyone's time, and I do have a hard stop in 5 minutes. I want to thank everyone for joining us. We're going to take a few more questions. I don't know if we should address this. I feel like so many good questions have been addressed, and I don't want to end on a bad note, but at the same time, there is a tremendous interview that you did with Stefan Burns lately. I want to include that in the show notes for people who have the replay of this Q&A. And Stefan is a geophysicist, and among other things, you discussed the safe zone. But one thing that Stefan addressed in his videos and his professional work is the impact of satellites on the EMF standpoint. And someone was asking me that in the chat here, and said, what do you think of the satellites and Starlink? Uh, the short version, I don't want to end on a bad note, but I'll just say that as far as I'm concerned, I have tremendous concerns then because of the way that we're rolling out all these satellites and blasting the earth with 5G. I don't want people to panic, but it's just another reason for people to focus on what they can do right now and talk about these issues, of course, but there's not much that Nick Pino, right now can do about Starlink satellites. Like, I don't have a long hook and I can bring them down or stop them. And at the moment, yes, activism is important, but in the meantime, the way I see it is, while we do the activism and of course talk about these issues and try to stop the rollout of satellites, but right now they're already, if I understand correctly, at thousands of satellites, and some of them are, after 5 years they're burning up in the atmosphere. What I would say is, it's another reason to focus on what you can control, which is your home environment, how you handle your phone. And a lot of tips that we shared in the EMF Hazards Summit was about personal responsibility with you and with your kids. Dr. Roth, I don't know if, I mean, this is not a hopeful
Well,
topic,
no,
but
no. The
what can we say
thing
about
is,
it?
I think the nice thing about it is people are becoming more aware.
Yeah.
I think people are speaking out. I think Stefan is an amazing, resource for information about what's going on the sun and the earth. And one of the things, sadly, we might have to hope for is a massive solar coronal mass ejection to wipe out all those satellites, which
Yeah.
seems to
All
be
at once.
happening at an escalating level right now. We're in
Yeah.
a solar maximum right now. And so these satellites are not going to survive. And we potentially, they're injecting all this garbage into the atmosphere. Unfortunately, it's really a foolish endeavor, something that is compromising everyone's health, for the sake of, social, who cares what you ate for breakfast on social media? Like, really, come on, guys, pick up a landline and call your friends and say hi. But this idea that we have to have everything wireless or we're going to perish. I mean, that's there's a cost that we're paying which is not worth the price. And quite frankly, your work, Nick, the message you're getting out there is so crucial to people waking up and recognizing the importance of helping improve our environment and speaking out, speaking to your politicians. All of this can help. But in the meantime, do what you can in your local environment, get your community active, take care of things that you can control, as Nick said. And that's the best we can do right now. And hopefully, more and more people, politicians, and so on, will start to recognize the importance of all these factors, and we'll see improvement.
Yes, and I must say to try to end this on a positive note, so that way you close out this long broadcast and you say, "Oh, well, maybe, it's not all doom and gloom." I will say that in the last 2 years, with this work, the EMF Hazards Summit, but also changes at the political level. And I don't talk about the fact that it's right now it's right wing that's winning, and it used to be left, and then it's. I don't care about any of it. First, I'm Canadian, and second, governments come and go, right? Every 2 years, every 4 years, depending on where you are. And then you have changes here in the provincial government's going to change and the federal government's going to change. The issue remains, right? The issue of EMFs, it is a nonpartisan issue. It is a call to more sanity in all this tech space. And right now, we don't have many people talking about these issues, including among health conscious people. So this is really why we connected so much, Dr. Roth. I was very impressed with your understanding of EMS, but then also you bring to the table like a deep understanding of other topics, which really opened my eyes to the way you talk about bone, the way you talk about injury and recovery, and bioelectricity was really really interesting to me and fascinating. And just in the last 2 years, I connected with so many individuals that are amazing. And I must say that I also saw a shift in the global awareness around EMFs. And it is the beginning of what I would love to see as a Canadian, a hockey stick figure, right? Where it goes exponential, and eventually you have, this critical number would be 10, 15, 20% of the entire population that has a big worry over Wi-Fi and cell phones. And at that point, manufacturers are going to be forced to look into it, because if they don't, they're going to lose market share. So I see that the free market can be impacted greatly if consumers demand safer technologies. And I think
Exactly.
that by joining this Q&A, sharing with friends, listening to the summit, even with the safe zone, these are new technologies that use electromagnetic fields that are human generated, but they are beneficial. Talking about the beneficial frequencies and also the harmful ones, all of it progresses society in a direction that I think will lead to greater wellness for everyone. So I have a lot of hope, even if we're in the midst of, a rollout of crazy tech that is completely uncontrolled. But still, I have to stay positive, and I have to, most of all, thank you, Dr. Roth, for offering your expertise and your knowledge and your love to everyone on this broadcast. We had well over 200 people join, and to everyone. I will post the replay for holders of the EMF pack. The EMF pack is simply the summit recordings. If you don't have them, there's still time until tomorrow at midnight to get them at a discount on emfhazards.com. And also, I will mention the coupon EMF Guy. It's quite simple. On the website for the Safe Zone. The website is wellnesssystems.com. I'll post it one last time in the chat. I don't know if you guys can copy paste it, but it's just for, the goal of this broadcast was to answer questions, not to sell things. But I know that many people are interested in devices that can make them healthier. It's completely optional. Please never feel pressured to buy anything, even the summit. I know that many people listen to my summits and prefer to watch free and never purchase anything. And I don't know if everyone saw go to wellnesssystems.com. And what I'll do is also with the replay, you're going to also get the recordings. And in a few days, we will have a dedicated email about the solutions that Dr. Roth brings to the table. So you will hear about it in a few days with the coupon code and whatnot. So I hope that everyone got a lot of value out of this broadcast. Dr. Roth, I am looking forward to meeting you in person again, spending some time exchanging ideas and getting treatment. And I'm really, really grateful for what you bring to the table in this conversation. And thank you again for being part of this special broadcast today.
My absolute Pleasure. Thank you so much for your support and also for bringing this important message to the world, which is really crucial.
Thank
Thanks,
you
and
so
thanks to
much.
everyone who joined and great questions. Appreciate it. And it's always good to collaborate with people who are thinking outside the box. All right. Thank
Thank you.
you.
I appreciate it. And thank you to everyone for joining. I really appreciate each of one of you that I see, sending thanks to you, Dr. Roth, and to myself. And big thanks to Melanie and Carla from our team also, who have been helping us in the background, gather questions. And I hope to do, another one of these, maybe through our EMF Circle membership, Dr. Roth, with you, because you have such a depth of understanding, and it's been a great 90 minutes. It just flew by. So I have to go pick up my kid now,
I
but
just need, I have another patient, but I just want to mention if you want to contact the Institute here to get an email to me
please,
about any clinical questions, it's info@matrixinstitute.net. Info, info@matrixrepatterning.com will work too. Info at
perfect.
matrixrepatterning.com is very simple. Okay.
Sounds good. And we'll make
We
sure to
look forward to
send
hearing
all of
from you if you
this
have any
with the
questions, and
replay.
thanks again. All right.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
I'll see you next weekend.
Sounds
Nick,
good.
take care.
Take care.
Bye,
Bye
everyone.
bye.